Now, our final speaker is Professor Erica James, who will be speaking about breast cancer and exercise. Erica is a behavioural epidemiologist in the School of Medicine and Public Health at the University of Newcastle. So, hi Erica, and we're glad to welcome you from Newcastle tonight.
Thanks, Anna. Delighted to be with you. So as Anna said, I'll be talking to you tonight about exercise and breast cancer, and this will be a blasting 10 minutes of the who, what, where and why of exercise in relation to breast cancer. So let's get started with why is exercise important, and it's been raised in some of the previous slides already. But as a first stop, we're really interested in the role that exercise has in terms of prevention, and as we've discussed, being physically active has been shown to reduce the risk of 7 different types of cancer, and for our special interest tonight, it's great to see that breast cancer is there on that list. Once women have been diagnosed with breast cancer, there's also a really strong relationship between how well they're doing and how active they are. So this slide has a big long list of potential improvements or how exercise can help overcome cancer-related side effects. And you can see on that list that it's a range of things that relate to how well your body functions, like your muscle strength and size and bone density. And obviously, we're all aware of the relationship between physical activity and body weight, but also some other things that are about how comfortably and how well we're living in terms of our quality of life and our activities of daily living. As researchers, whenever we're making recommendations, we're always interested in the strength of the evidence. So how confident can we be about a recommendation? And the way that we express that is that if there's been multiple studies done with different populations of people in different parts of the world, with similar interventions, but with different research groups, and we're all getting very similar results or answers, that leads us to feel much more confident. And in those cases, we would say that we have very strong evidence of a particular recommendation. So for all cancers, in terms of physical activity and exercise, we have strong evidence that being active can help reduce cancer-related fatigue, improve health-related quality of life, improve physical function, help with anxiety and depression, and help prevent and manage lymphedema. So as I said, that was for all cancer types. What's special and what also stands out particularly for breast cancer is really exciting, and that is that there's very strong evidence that targeted exercise can reduce the risk of breast cancer recurrence. So that's that breast cancer coming back after treatment. So when is exercise relevant in relation to breast cancer? So the way that we think about this is shown in this model, where you can see that on the left-hand side of the screen, we're talking about prevention. We then have a point in time where there's a diagnosis. We move through treatment into rehabilitation and into survivorship. And there's a role for exercise and physical activity at every point along this model. So we've already discussed about the, depending on your own personal risk level, the importance that being physically active can have in preventing that initial diagnosis. But we also are really interested in how to help women be as active as possible after they've been diagnosed. And I've highlighted there the time period between being diagnosed and actually commencing treatment, where there's now a lot of new attention, and we're calling them prehabilitation studies, where this might be where a woman is waiting to commence chemotherapy or radiation therapy, or waiting for surgery, and actually is there a role for physical activity at that time in terms of preparing her for the treatment. And so there's a lot of interest in that space as well. Historically, we used to really focus on helping people be as active as possible after they'd finished treatment, but we now know there's a lot of benefit in being as active as possible during that treatment as well as after treatment. So I get this question a lot, when can I start exercising? You can start exercising anytime during or after your treatment. In general, the earlier you start, the better, but it's never too late to start. If you do start exercising, however, it's important to start exercising slowly and gradually build up to the recommended levels. Don't jump in too quickly and too intensively, even if you've been a regular exerciser prior to your cancer diagnosis or in an earlier part of your life. So what sort of exercise are we recommending? What are we talking about? There's two major types of exercise that have really good quality evidence in relation to breast cancer. The first is the grouping of aerobic exercise, which is walking, swimming, cycling, running. We're all familiar with those that type of exercise. And the second that's a little bit less common and that much fewer women are participating in is the resistance type exercise. So this is where we would use weights or gym equipment, resistance bands, or even body weight to do resistance activities that are actually designed to build muscle mass. So what sort of exercise are we talking about in terms of intensity? So we really want to be moving beyond that very light activity of a stroll with a friend and a chat, or walking the dog, or just doing gardening or light housework. And we want to get into this zone of moderate intensity. Now, the way I'd usually describe that to people is when you're walking really briskly, like you're running late for an appointment, and you could probably still have a conversation, but you wouldn't be comfortable to sing. That's really the space of moderate intensity activity that we're wanting to get you in for that aerobic activity. If it's for the strength-based activities, the moderate intensity guideline that you could use is, can I lift that weight and do those repetitions 8 to 12 times without having to have a break? So they're our kind of guidelines in terms of the intensity of exercise. So how much do you need to do to make a difference? So some exercise is better than none, and more is generally better than not much, or more is generally better. And so we've got two very concrete recommendations, and it depends on your age. So if you're aged under 64 years, we really want you to be in that moderate zone of activity for somewhere between half an hour to an hour most days of the week. That will get you to reach that 2.5 to 5 hours of moderate activity. If you're able to do more vigorous intensity activity than that, so that might be high intensity interval training, for example, then you can actually reduce the amount of time. But for most people, we're really focused on that half an hour to an hour most days of the week at that moderate intensity level. We also really want you to add 2 sessions a week of those strength building activities. If you're over 65, half an hour a day of that moderate activity most days of the week is terrific. And we want you to start thinking really broadly about your well-being in terms of physical activity. So let's include some weight-bearing activity, let's include some resistance training, but also some activities that are going to help with balance and flexibility. So they're things like Pilates or yoga, maybe water aerobics, and other activities. So we're really looking for quite a holistic prescription across your week. So that all might be sounding very interesting, but you might be sitting there thinking, and how would I possibly get started? I've been trying to be active for years and I've never managed it. What can I do now? And so these are my suggestions in terms of the research, what the research tells us on people who've been able to successfully change their behaviours and become more active and sustain those and have it to be a lifelong habit or a lifelong behaviour change. So it's really important that you choose exercise that you enjoy doing, and that you can integrate in a regular way into your lifestyle. Setting goals and making an action plan have really good evidence to show that the people who do that, who write it down, who share that plan with their friends and family and get them engaged and on board, are much more successful at making changes to their physical activity. The brochure, or the booklet that I've just displayed there on the screen is from Breast Cancer Network Australia and is available free online, and has a lovely summary and some worked examples to help you write good goals, to help you convert goals into an action plan, to think about some of the barriers that are common for women, and strategies to overcome them. And I highly recommend that to you. If you've got any other health concerns or problems, or you really think, I think I need a bit more expert help here, I'd really love an expert to write me an exercise prescription, You could go to your GP and ask for a chronic disease management plan. So this is a federally funded program that is available to everyone, and you working with your GP, they can organise for you to get Medicare subsidised visits to exercise specialists that are called exercise physiologists. And you can have up to 5 visits in a calendar year and work together with that exercise physiologist to undergo some exercise testing and get a personalised exercise plan that suits your needs and your stage of treatment and recovery. There's also a lot of community-based resources for people who've experienced cancer who are interested in becoming more active. I've listed just a couple as examples here. The Cancer Council in New South Wales runs a free program called Enriching Survivorship that includes physical activity programming, so you get to learn how to use resistance bands, how to count your steps and set goals, together with some healthy eating and weight maintenance strategies. And that's run by an accredited exercise physiologist and a dietitian, and they're run free. The YWCA runs a program nationally called Encore, which is specifically for women who've had breast surgery, and it's a gentle exercise and recovery to help prevent lymphedema, and also to link you up with other women who've been going through a similar experience to you in terms of social support. So it's about gentle stretching, flexibility, and it's a water-based program. And then there are individual clinics around. So there's a not-for-profit organisation here locally in Newcastle called the Caden Centre that offer exercise oncology services for low or no cost. And they also offer a telehealth service. So regardless of where you live, you can work one-on-one with an exercise specialist to have a program tailored to you. So that's your 10 minutes of how, what, why and where, and I'm really welcome some questions.
Well, thank you, Erica. You've inspired me to do some exercise after this event tonight. I do have a question that's come through from Louise, and Louise has asked, what effect does regular exercise have on metastatic breast cancer, and does research show that it increases longevity and progression-free survival?
Oh, terrific question. Thanks, Louise. So you're quite right that most of the research that I presented tonight was actually on women who had localised breast cancer rather than disease that was advanced or metastatic. There isn't as much. We've certainly research in groups with metastatic disease. However, there was a very exciting trial published last year out of France called the STORM study. And in that study, it was specifically designed to look at the impact of physical activity on survival of women with metastatic breast cancer. And they had 1,500 women in that study. What they did was group the women into the least active or light activity, that group who were moderate activity, which is what I was talking about earlier, where we're out of breath but could still sing, and then those who were doing vigorous activity. And they followed those women over time and then looked at whether there was a breast cancer recurrence, whether there was a death from breast cancer or a death from any other cause. And they concluded that survival was improved through physical activity. And those women who completed moderate or vigorous saw much better improvements than those who only were in the light physical activity group. Now, what they weren't able to identify was what's the magic dose? Where's the tipping point that this is, the absolute amount that women need to do? And that's an area that we still need to do more investigation. We've got a good idea that the more you do, the better, but we can't yet pinpoint exactly what's that magic dose point.